Number 10. Haunted San Antonio's Abandoned Asylum. In San Antonio, there is an abandoned asylum shrouded in mystery and rumor. The creepy and dilapidated buildings inspired wild stories, including rumors that doctors at the insane asylum went crazy and massacred some of the patients. But unfortunately for all you horror fans out there, these rumors are not actually true, and the supposed abandoned asylum was actually an old juvenile home for kids. The facility, called the Bexar County Juvenile Home for Boys, was built in 1915. At the time, this type of facility was called a poor farm. It was where poor, destitute boys who had no other place to go would be sent when they got caught misbehaving or breaking the law. By 1925, the juvenile home had a serious reputation for cruelty. Children inside the facility were so desperate to get out that one resorted to eating rat poison. In 1933, a staff member on site was convicted of murdering a 14-year-old who was in the facility's care after an argument. By 1996, all 4 of the structures were abandoned and left to rot. It was after its abandonment that people started assuming the creepy old building was an insane asylum. After all, the interior is horrifying, with metal bars, padded rooms, and all the atmosphere of what we imagine abandoned asylums to look like. Number 9. Reculver Towers. The Reculver Towers in England are the only structures that remain from what was once an ancient Saxon church. The church, called St. Mary's, was part of a Roman fortress guarding the Once-Some Channel. The fortress itself was built about 2,000 years ago in 210 AD, with the church coming later as an addition in 669. But it was demolished in 1809 because there were fears it would collapse into the sea. The only thing that remained were the 2 towers, the Reculver Towers, as they were needed as a landmark for shipping vessels. When ships returned, they used the towers to mark their position. In the Middle Ages, they even dipped their sails when they went past the church to show respect. But here's where the abandoned towers get creepy. It's said that the church is haunted. Visitors of the towers at night have claimed to have heard children screaming and crying. There are also accounts of a monk, a galloping horse, and a middle-aged woman's ghost haunting the location. Many believe that the cries of the children are due to the several remains of children's bones discovered buried beneath the foundation in the 1960s, which could explain why the church's towers are still haunted to this day by their pitiful ghosts. Number 8. Abandoned Mining Complex. Hidden deep in the Ural Mountains, a dangerous mining complex from World War II era lies abandoned. The mining complex is a labyrinth of dark tunnels, poorly constructed in a hurry to supply the Russian armies, and were abandoned after the end of hostilities. Some of these tunnels are at risk of leaking gases such as methane and carbon dioxide, as well as hydrogen sulfide. Access to the tunnels is dangerous and frightening, with poorly constructed supports, collapsed sections, flooding, and other risks to anyone who dares enter. The place is a total disaster. Photographers have ventured into the mines to take incredible photos, showing the abandoned and rusted equipment simply left behind, collapsed sections of track, and other eerie and otherworldly remnants of the former mineral ore supply lines. Number 7. Chilean Ghost Town. Humberstone is a haunted ghost town located in Chile. If the name Humberstone sounds a little too British for a country where most of the country speaks Spanish, that's because it is. The town was named after a British chemical engineer named James Humberstone. James went to South America in 1875 and started a small mining town in the middle of the Atacama Desert, close to the border of both Peru and Bolivia. He mined saltpeter, which was used to make fertilizer. Up until the early part of the 20th century, just about all the saltpeter in the world came from the Atacama Desert. It was big business. At the time, the demand for saltpeter was so huge that it made up 60% of the fiscal revenue of the entire country of Chile. They literally lived off saltpeter. But alas, the boom came to an end. World War I broke out, and the Germans figured out how to create a synthetic substitute that could be used for fertilizer instead of saltpeter. Within just a few years, the entire saltpeter industry collapsed, and dozens of towns throughout the desert, just like Humberstone, were abandoned. But Humberstone still remains alone in the desert today, empty and sad, but still there as a desolate reminder of the era of Chile's saltpeter domination. Number 6. The Jetstar roller coaster. In 2012, devastating Hurricane Sandy ripped through the Atlantic, the largest and deadliest storm of that hurricane season. When it hit the coast of New Jersey, Sandy blew through Seaside Heights and devastated Casino Pier, the Seaside Heights amusement park. The Jetstar roller coaster was among the rides utterly destroyed. Before that, the roller coaster had been a famous and iconic sight at the Seaside Heights amusement park for around a decade. But Hurricane Sandy destroyed pretty much everything on the Casino Pier, tearing down all the rides like the log flume, the centrifuge, and Stillwalk Manor. The Jetstar was the only ride that remained visible above the waves after Sandy ripped the pier apart and dumped rides into the ocean. The sight attracted tourists, anxious for photos of Sandy's devastation. It was a complete hazard that had the potential to fall down on any curious urban explorer trying to get photographs. But regardless of the danger, the Jetstar was a depressing icon for New Jersey. At least it was before a dredging company began removing the ride from the water. Over the course of just a few days, a barge and crane ripped apart the old roller coaster and took it away to be buried in a scrap yard. Number 5. Memmingen Military Base. The Memmingen Military Base hasn't been used or touched in about 25 years. It's known by locals in Germany as the Forbidden City. The base is located roughly 20 miles from Berlin, originally used to house prisoners of war during World War I. In 1935, the base became the headquarters for the armed forces, meaning it was the military command center for the Nazis during World War II. After the war was over, the Soviets took the base for themselves and occupied it with 40,000 soldiers. But the Soviet Union eventually dissolved. By 1994, when the Soviets disintegrated, all the troops were gone from the Memmingen military base, and it was officially abandoned. 25 years on, and the base is still standing, more of a tomb than a military center now. Would you ever explore such a creepy military base, occupied by both the Nazis and the soldiers of the former USSR? Let us know how brave you are in the comments, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Number 4. Yuma Territorial Prison. The Yuma Territorial Prison sits on a bluff overlooking the Colorado River. Its history goes back to around 1849, when the town of Yuma began to experience a huge surge in immigrants crossing on the way to California. A military post was established. Then, when there was a gold rush in Yuma in 1858, Yuma County was born. The Territorial Prison came soon after in 1875, with a total budget of $25,000 for the project. It was because of all the gold, greed, and wild freedom of the West that the prison was ever needed in the first place. The first 7 inmates were put in the prison on July 1st, 1876. According to Arizona State Parks, among these criminals was the legendary stagecoach robber Pearl Hart. The prison continued to operate and house bad guys for 33 years. But then, because of overcrowding and a huge boom in crime, all inmates had to be moved to a new facility in Florence, and the Territorial Prison was abandoned. But just wait, because it wasn't abandoned forever. In the 1920s and 1930s, homeless people, and even homeless families ravaged by the Great Depression, moved into the cells at the prison. Then, in 1939, local residents raised enough funds to renovate the guard towers and turn the entire prison into a living museum. Number 3. Spooky Farmhouse. Photographer Brian Sansevero is known for exploring some of the creepiest abandoned places in the US. As a native of Long Island, he travels far and wide to explore the truly creepy places of the country. His most recent expedition had him traveling to a farmhouse in Maryland, a huge structure originally built in 1890. Brian uncovered a horse-drawn carriage in the barn, children's toys scattered across the floor from the 1900s, and the remnants of ordinary family life from between the 1800s and the 2000s. It was basically a time capsule showing off the last 200 years. How did Brian find the amazing farmhouse? Well, that's one of the secrets that he doesn't tell anyone. All he told the media was that the farmhouse was very difficult to locate, with the driveway so overgrown that you can't even see it from the road. Chances are it's so deep in Maryland that nobody even knows it's there. He believes it was probably abandoned in the 2000s, since there were some fairly modern objects in the house. But the creepy barn also had some bizarre vintage clothing, including a wedding dress from the 1950s. Number 2. St. Elmo. St. Elmo is one of the best preserved ghost towns anywhere in the American West. But that doesn't mean it's not a spooky place to visit, especially at night. It's located near Buena Vista, just 30 minutes from the nearest town. Amazingly, there are still 43 buildings in St. Elmo, including a courthouse and jail, private homes, and a good old-fashioned saloon. St. Elmo actually started as a forest city in the year 1880. By 1881, the town had 2,000 residents, most of them men. The town drew in silver miners and gold fiends. But when the train service to the area stopped in 1926, long after the gold boom had died, the town shriveled and vanished. By 1958, there was no one left. The town is still empty today, but now it's a tourist destination. The general store is open seasonally to provide souvenirs and snacks. You can rent a creepy cabin and spend the night. Word is that there are some people even trying to move into the city to bring it back to life. Number 1. Willard Asylum for the Chronic Insane. The Willard Asylum for the Chronic Insane is as terrifying as it sounds. It's located in New York, a collection of old Victorian buildings that are falling to pieces. And although we think about insane asylums today as places of torture and evil, back when this institution opened, it was supposed to be an alternative to the truly dark places where people with mental illnesses were sent. In the early part of the 19th century, if you didn't have somebody to care for you and you suffered from an illness of the mind, you were sent to something called an almshouse. It was basically a shelter, almost definitely overcrowded and full of degenerates. It was the Surgeon General Dr. Sylvester D. Willard who proposed a hospital run by the state. 6 days before his death, Abraham Lincoln signed the proposal. That was how the Willard Asylum started. The first patient was welcomed in 1869. One of the first patients arrived at the hospital stuffed inside a chicken crate. Another was a girl who had been shackled in a cell since she was a young child. The asylum was clearly a better alternative to where they had been. But through the years, the hospital got worse and worse. What started as a good idea turned into a place of cruelty, where anyone with anything even slightly wrong with them was thrown into a cell and treated like a crazy person. The last patient was let out of the hospital in 1995, and it closed its doors forever. Today, things left behind by the staff can still be found in the creepy rooms. What's the creepiest abandoned place you've ever explored? Let us know in the comments, and thanks so much for watching. Hit the subscribe button for more of the best videos, and come back soon. See you next time!